Would you state your name, Director?
Darryl Richmond Holly.
And what do you do, Mr. Holly?
I'm a field construction coordinator for Oncore Electric Delivery.
And how long have you worked at Oncore?
About 37 years.
Have you always been in that position you're in now?
No, sir.
Have you gone from lineman up the ranks to where you are currently?
Yes, sir.
And how are you in management?
No, sir.
And do you supervise employees?
Yes, sir. I oversee contractors.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
Coordinate contractors
Okay.
for the company.
Who is in management at Oncore, if you know?
Specific names.
Yeah.
I know RC.
Who's your supervisor?
My supervisor is Bobby Pena.
Is Bobby Pena in management?
He is a supervisor. I would consider that management. Yes, sir.
Okay. And who's the supervisor for Mr. Whitehead?
I do not know.
Terry Whitehead.
I don't know.
Okay. Do you supervise him at all?
No, sir.
Who's responsible for the training at Oncore of employees?
We have a training department.
And who's in that training department?
I don't know who is over it at the moment. I haven't been there in a while.
Do you know who would have been over it in 2019?
No, sir.
All right. Can you tell me what CAPS training is?
CAPS is the lineman training program.
Okay, and do you do that before you become a lineman?
As you progress.
Okay, so that's like the first thing you do as a lineman is you got to go through 5 years of CAPS training. Is that right?
On the job training would be a good way to consider that. It's as you progress.
And that's at the beginning. You don't do the on-the-job training after you're a lineman. You do it before you're a lineman, correct?
No, sir. You're hired on as a lineman and trained.
And for how long?
I believe it's a 5-year program now.
Okay. But my question is, do you do that at the beginning of your hiring on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you'd been there 26 years, you would have, it'd be safe to say that you did your CAPS training in the first 5 years.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's your educational background?
High school graduate, some college.
Where'd you go to school?
High school, DeSoto.
Where'd you go to college classes?
A little bit at UTA, Arlington.
Okay. And did you say 37 years at Oncore?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what was your job title on March 13th of 2019?
My present position, field construction coordinator.
And would you tell me what you do as a field construction coordinator?
And regular work hours, it's overseeing new construction. If there's trouble that happens, we oversee the contractor as they fix the situation. Storm duty, they were called in when storms come through to oversee. Contractors are assigned to us, and we oversee those contractors.
Okay. And you oversee them on behalf of Oncore?
Yes, sir.
Now, as relates to March 13th of 2019, you're kind of an after the fact witness to me because you weren't there before it happened. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Did you have any knowledge of what was going on 3/13 of 2019 before this incident that brings us here today?
I was called to work that morning to work storm duty.
And where were you assigned to work?
The first ticket Well, that wasn't the first ticket I was given, but then I was given this work order.
Now that when you were given this work order, was after the truck had already and the cars had already come in contact with the lines. Is that true?
I do not know when they came in contact with the line.
Even as you sit here today, you don't know?
I know that they did, or I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
sir. I came after it apparently happened because nothing happened while I was there.
okay. When did you get there?
Around noon. I don't have a specific exact time frame.
Okay. I represent to you that the wrecks and all these collisions happened about 11:50 a.m. just before noon.
Okay.
And so your recollection is all that had occurred before you got there.
Yes, sir. I never saw any of that happen.
Now, the first job or work order, I believe you called it, that you went to was at a different location about some other damage, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you got that resolved and then you came to this one, or you left that one unresolved and came to this one?
It was pulled off of my truck and given to somebody else. I was given this ticket.
Okay, Mr. Holly, do you know why that happened?
No, sir, I do not.
Were you pulled off because of your experience?
I don't know why they gave it to me or pulled it off of me.
Who makes those decisions at Oncore?
The supervisors in the storm room.
Okay, and who was the supervisor in the storm room that made the decision to pull you off, send you out to 4,000 block of I-20?
I do not know who made that call.
Okay, fair enough. And were you given any reason, or you just get the order and you go do it?
No, sir. I just take the ticket that they gave me. I don't worry about what they pulled off or why.
What do you recollect was on the ticket for you to do at the 4,000 block of I-20 on March 13th of 2019?
Replace poles and lines that we had broke poles down,
Okay.
wire down.
Right. Okay. Who owns the poles that you were going to replace?
I believe they were Oncore poles.
And who owns the lines that you were going to replace?
Oncore.
And who is in control and possession of the poles and the lines that you were going to work on?
Who is in possession? What do you mean by in possession?
Well, an owner has a right to possess their property or lease it to somebody else or rent it to somebody else. I'm wanting to know if the poles and the lines you were going to work on were in the possession as well as ownership of Oncore.
Okay, I'm not 100% sure if they were Encores. We own some. They can be co-owned or joint use.
Right. Do
So
you know?
I'm not 100% on those specific poles, which one were Oncore poles, but they are our electric conductor.
Do you know where I would go to find out if these were 100% owned by Oncore?
Not who specifically to call.
Okay. I don't think it's in doubt that it's Oncore property, but if it is, do you know who I would send an inquiry to? I'd send it to your lawyer, of course, but
Right.
I'm wondering who might have this information.
No, sir, I do not know.
Okay. Can you tell me what you said there's an emergency room or something like that?
There is a storm desk, what we call it.
Okay. And is that kind of like all hands on deck? We got to, I know you were doing something else, but we got to do this storm repair.
Yes, sir, if they call us to work storm duty.
Do they give you special training for working storm duty?
Our lineman training experience.
So no additional special training. It's just first 5-year training to be a lineman?
Well, the first 37 years.
Well, in your case,
Sure.
if you're a new guy, you might not have 37 years. Okay. What do they train you about emergency situations that cannot wait for a lineman to repair?
Assess the situation and make it safe for public.
And that's important to make it safe for the public. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
And what do they train you about the level that power lines are to be placed above a highway or interstate?
There is in our spec sheets manuals that give a height that they should be, but storm situation, there's not a specific.
There's not an exception for a storm. If power lines over a highway have to be a certain height, they have to be that height whether there's a storm or not. Will you agree with that?
No, sir, I would not. You can't control what a storm does.
Right. And so if it's a hazard to the public, you can control that the public be restricted access at or near Oncore property. True?
Yes, sir, if it was a hazard.
Yeah. And 70-mile-an-hour traffic with down lines is definitely a hazard, isn't it?
The lines I saw were above the traffic and it was moving.
What I'm saying to you, you know that a truck hit a line.
I was told that, yes, sir.
Well, and I understand you didn't see it. Have you seen the video of the truck hitting the line?
Yes, sir.
And so you know that a truck contacted a line at the 4000 block of I-20 on March 13th of 2019, right?
Yes, sir.
And you know that that line was hung on an Oncore pole.
It was on a pole.
And you also know that the pole was, that these Oncore lines were being held up by a tree.
Yes, sir, they were laying in the tree when I arrived.
Right. And that's not something that's according to safety procedure, is it? It's not safe to have high voltage lines being supported by a tree.
They were de-energized at the time.
Now, how do you know that?
I was told they were.
By whom?
Our dispatcher.
How would the dispatcher know?
Their control board.
What is their control board? I don't follow that.
Well, they monitor the system.
Oh, so they can,
our grid.
they can tell. You have some way for them to tell whether lines are energized?
Not 100%.
Okay. We're not making a claim that somebody was electrocuted.
Yes, sir.
And so the energized lines is really not the point. The point is, if these lines are sagging over below the acceptable standard, that's a problem over a freeway, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And what's your training at Oncore about giving correct and accurate information to the Department of Transportation, the fire department, the police department, the highway patrol, so that they can secure a highway that has lines that are sagging too low?
What is my training?
Yeah.
37 years of experience.
Well, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, the lines were clear. The traffic was flowing under it.
Well, the lines weren't clear and the traffic wasn't flowing under it because
When I was there, they were.
it had already been hit.
Okay.
Now, I'm talking about before you saw the video where the Benny Keith truck hits the line, correct?
Yes, sir.
Before that time, if the lines are too low, that's a dangerous condition to the traveling public. Would you agree?
If they are hanging too low, yes, sir.
And obviously, there was a line hanging from an Oncore pole that was below the legal standard, correct?
Due to the storm, yes, sir.
All of the lines on the Oncore pole were not safe for the traveling public on March 13th of 2019 at 11:50 a.m. Is that true?
I was not there at 11:50 a.m.
Well, you saw the video.
Yes, sir. I saw a video.
Wasn't safe. Was it?
The truck hit it. So no, sir.
Did you see what happened to my client's car?
I saw a picture.
Did you know that the highline wires went into her engine and it totaled the value of her car, completely totaled it?
I saw a picture where it was cut into the car, yes, sir.
If it was about a foot higher, would have decapitated her, correct?
That's speculation.
Sure it is, but it's reasonable speculation because at 70 miles an hour, if a cable is strong enough to cut into your motor, it'll sure cut your head off, wouldn't it?
Okay, yes, sir.
And Oncore is well aware of how to shut down freeways, aren't they?
Yes, sir.
And you've been specifically trained on what to do on how to shut down a freeway.
If deemed necessary, yes, sir.
That's right. If deemed necessary by whom is what my investigation is about. Who deems it necessary?
Whoever would it seem would deem it unsafe.
Yeah, and if the person who is doing the deeming doesn't even know the standard, the law, or the rules and regulations about highline wires over a freeway, it wouldn't be very accurate. It wouldn't be an accurate decision, would it?
If traffic was flowing underneath it safely, I would call that good.
Okay, so the test is until we have a problem, we don't have a problem.
No, sir, that's not what I said.
Okay, well, did you know that the lines were sagging lower on the westbound lanes of traffic than they were the eastbound?
Yes, sir, the South Pole was still in the air.
Right. The North Pole was the one that was hanging in a tree.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm kind of skipping around here, but I want to show you some work orders is what these were represented to me as being. Do you see this on the screen? This document?
Yes, sir. And if I can't make it bigger.
Well, let me just take you up to the top. This is an Oncore work order for this event. You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
And it's at 4 in the morning. Correct?
Yes, sir. That's the day that event was created.
So Oncore has knowledge of these events, at least at this time. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
And that's over 8 hours from the time that this work order was created until this wreck with all these cars happened with the highline wires. Will you agree with that?
Yes, sir, that was,
Okay. Employee contact says Terry Whitehead. Do you know, does that mean he wrote this work order?
right there, yes, sir.
And I'm not familiar with these, so I'm asking. Priority is work now.
Work, what does work now mean?
Yeah, does that mean let's do it right away or?
Don't, it's either that or work later. That's not a work later ticket.
Okay, so it's work now or work later are the two options.
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you see down here where it talks about TxDOT shutting down I-20 to make the road crossing?
Yes, sir, I see that.
Now that's in order to replace the poles and the lines that you ultimately repaired yourself, correct?
Yeah, so that's a comment by whoever.
Well,
that
let me ask you, whoever is this person that's on this work order, isn't it?
Well, the events, dispatchers can add comments.
Okay.
He created the initial.
Did you do the work to repair this, these lines and poles?
I was part of it. I started.
Y'all surely didn't repair it while the traffic was going underneath you, did you?
No, sir. While I was there, we were trying to get poles set.
Well, when they set the poles and they strung the lines back up, they closed I-20 for that period of time, didn't they?
I do not know that, but
That's the procedure, isn't it?
yes, sir. If we would have been working on the lines, we would have them shut the freeway down at that
So
time.
it is not only possible for Oncore to get the freeway shut down, that's custom and practice when you're working over the freeway on lines and repair, isn't it?
In a situation as this, it would have been shut down.
Now, this is another work order, 6 in the morning. Did you see that?
Yes, sir. I see it.
And here it says, unsure if sparking or arcing. Fire department on the scene will remain. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Do you know who wrote this report?
No, sir. I do not.
Do you see where it says there are now 3 poles that have snapped in half?
Yes, sir.
Now that's at 6:30 in the morning. Or wait a minute, is that, yeah, it's at 6:16 in the morning. So the truck hasn't hit the lines yet. Is that right?
Okay. You said the truck hit the lines at 11:15.
No, 11:50.
11:50. Okay.
Okay, so there's 3 poles that are snapped at this location at 6 in the morning, according to this detail of event.
Okay.
Now I'm going to go back up here to the top, if I can get my cursor to work. Now this shows to be at 8:33 in the evening. You would have already been there, right? Because you said you got there around noon or so.
Yes, sir.
Who is Randy Woods?
I do not know.
Okay. Do you see where this is talking about access poles from the church parking lot? Do you know who John Nolt is?
I believe that was the gentleman that I was to contact with TxDOT.
Okay, so 6 hours and some change after my client contacted the wires is we want to shut down I-20. The wire is floating and laying in a tree. Is that what it says?
We want to shut, yes, sir, that's what it says.
And as you said, under this circumstance, I-20 would have been shut down. should have been shut down.
No, sir, I did not say that.
Well, I thought you said that it would have been shut down to make the repairs.
Once we started to move conductor, we would have had it shut down.
Right. What's your training about shutting it down when your poles are snapped and there's wires laying in the freeway on a 70-mile-an-hour freeway?
They were above the freeway, not laying in it, sir.
I want to focus you on the line that hit the truck. That's in the freeway, right?
Yes, sir, it was going up over the freeway.
The line that you saw the picture of that went through my client's grill was laying in the freeway.
I saw a picture where it was in the grill.
Well, she didn't fly up there and hit it in the air, right?
No, sir.
She would have hit it because it's laying in the freeway.
Fair statement.
And that line that she contacted with her car was on an Oncore owned, possessed, and controlled pole.
Like I said again, did not know if that was an Encore pole or not. But yes, sir, that was our facility.
It was a pole that Oncore sent you to fix.
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is at 10:21. And I'm not used to military time, but I think that's 10:21 in the morning.
Yes, sir.
That's an hour and a half before my client hit these lines laying in the freeway. Agreed?
Okay. Okay. Yes, sir.
And on this work order, we're still talking about John Nolt at TxDOT and shutting down I-20.
It says when we want to shut it down, he's the contact. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And who is it for Oncore that makes the decision that we need to shut this down?
If we would have been moving wire at the time, I would have called him.
Would you have called him had you arrived on the scene 4 hours earlier and noticed that the wire was hanging too low over the interstate?
I don't. If I considered it a dangerous situation, yes, sir.
Well, and let me just ask you, Mr. Holly, because truck drivers driving down the road have a right to believe that overpasses and highline wires are going to be in compliance with state and federal law, don't they?
Yes, sir.
They don't have to stop and every time they come to one and say, is this wire hanging in a tree? Was there a storm that made this too low? They don't have to do that, right?
Correct.
And it's the responsibility of the property owner to make these conditions safe, repair, or to keep the public away from them. Would you agree with that?
We can't control acts of God.
Yeah, and it's not really an act of God. God,
Storm, yes, sir.
no, it's really not. A storm is an act of God, but failure to divert traffic and close the highway certainly was no fault of God's, was it?
I see where you're going. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And the storm happened at 4:45 in the morning. Agreed?
So I was told I wasn't called till 7.
Well, but I'm looking, you see this record right here
Yes,
of Oncore?
By that, the first ticket was made. Yes, sir.
So the storm happened just before that.
Okay.
All right. So for 8 hours and some change, Oncore had noticed that there was a problem out here about I-20. Would you agree with that?
That's when the ticket came in. So, yes, sir.
So somebody at Oncore, and I want to know who we want is. You see this right here? That's what I'm doing here, is trying to find out who is it that we makes the decision whether or not for 8 hours to shut this interstate down so we can repair this damage.
Like I say, if we would have done it, I would have made the call if I would have been working on those lines.
I understand. I'm not trying to blame you. I'm just trying to see what the Oncore policy, procedure, custom, and practice is. And you have the authority, if you had been working, to call it if you thought it was a dangerous situation.
Yes, sir.
What is a troubleshooter?
When a lights out or somebody calls in with an issue, he was the first
Okay.
person to go.
And is it the troubleshooter's responsibility to assess the damage and the circumstances surrounding each loss and outage?
He would assess and create that ticket.
Okay. I understand that the communication lines were owned by Charter Communications. So I want you to understand that I got that. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. I'm aware of that too.
And I also understand that the high voltage electrical lines were owned by Oncore.
Yes, sir.
My question is, Charter Communication has claimed that they can't work on their line until you've repaired the Oncore line and made the electrical line safe by de-energizing them for them to do their work. Is that true?
Yes, sir. In my experience, they will not work on theirs until we have ours.
Now, is that a personal choice, or is that a rule? Is that a practice, a policy, custom, procedure?
Well, they don't know about electricity, so it's smart on their part to stay clear.
Okay. Because they don't know about electricity, I'm not sure if they do or not, but assuming that they don't know about electricity, they can't work on a situation where there's a snap pole until somebody at Oncore tells them it's safe. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How is it that, if you know, how is it that Charter Communication comes to be allowed to hang their communication lines on Oncore owned property, on Oncore owned easements and rights of way?
I just know we have joint use on those poles. I don't know.
Do you know who at Oncore makes a decision as to whether or not they can have that joint use?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay. Is it a common occurrence that you encounter electric transmission lines with communication wires having joint use?
I don't work in the transmission department.
Well, I mean, you were a lineman for a long time and you've been in this job for 37 years. Do you commonly encounter joint use scenarios?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. And I'm just asking you, Mr. Holly, does it matter who owns the line if it's causing a danger to the public? You should do something about it if you see it is a danger. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
What do they train you about measuring highline wires over an interstate at Oncore?
We have just our inspection manuals.
Well, I know the inspection manuals tell you what it's supposed to be. What I want to know is, do you just eyeball it? Do you get out a measuring tape, or do you have one of those electronic things that'll measure it? How do you determine?
No, sir, we just eyeballed it.
Okay. And is eyeball at the industry standard?
Do not know.
Well, in 37 years, you have a lot of practice eyeballing how high and how low power lines are, I would assume.
Yes, sir.
Imagine. Police officers don't have that same ability, to your knowledge, do they?
He can look like I did and saw that traffic was flowing under it when I was there.
Yeah, but I'm talking about determining whether the highline wire is, all the wires coming off a pole are in compliance with state and federal law.
He would not know,
Right.
probably.
But you would, right?
I would have a better idea, yes, sir.
And any troubleshooter that works for Oncore should have the ability to have a better idea.
Yes, sir.
That one's at 10. I think there's one more I want to show you. Okay, do you know who Bobbitt George is?
No, sir.
Okay. At 10:21, there's a note that says, not enough time today. TxDOT is shutting down tomorrow to make the road crossing. So do you know who at Oncore would have made that decision in agreement with TxDOT?
No, sir, I do not.
Because this is an hour and 30 minutes before the crashes.
I do not know who made that statement.
Okay. Do you know who all can add information to this? Terry Whitehead shows to be the employee contact, but you said dispatchers can add the comments. Do you know
Yes,
who
sir.
else can?
No, sir, I don't know everybody that can.
Do you know the name of the dispatcher that was working on this day?
No, sir, I do not.
Do you know why a dispatcher would be qualified and trained to add comments to emergency situations?
He would be adding what he was told or
Okay.
reported to him.
Now listen to my question very carefully. And assume with me that Oncore owns the pole, that we've got some information that Oncore owns the pole in question on March 13th of 2019, okay?
Okay.
If all of the lines coming off that pole are not in accordance with state and federal regulations, that is a dangerous situation for the motoring public.
You asking me if it is?
Yes.
Potentially could be, yes, sir.
And the owner or occupier of the property could post warning signs, could post whatever you call those orange cones, or could request that the highway traffic be diverted or even closed. Is that true? The owner, Oncore, has the right to ensure safety of the motoring public, and in ways that they could do that are posting those little orange cones, warning signs, diverting traffic, or asking that the highway be closed. Is that true?
We could make a request, yes, sir.
And as far as you know, before the line was hit, none of those things were done.
Not that I'm aware of.
And because the line was hanging down, do you know how tall 18-wheeler trucks are allowed to be?
No, sir.
Do you know how tall bridge overpasses are allowed to be, or how tall they must be?
I do not.
All right. Do you understand what the NEC safety code is?
National Electric Code?
Yes. Does
Yes, sir.
that, are the workers in Oncore bound by the provisions of the National Electric Safety Code?
I do not believe so.
Why, and why not?
I think if that's, I believe that's a different standard that we are held to.
Which standard are you held to?
I can't recall the name, sir.
If the Texas Transportation Code requires highline wires and communication wires to be a certain level, Oncore has to follow that. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
And do you understand that high voltage power lines are required to be 20 to 22 feet above a highway?
I would have to go back and look, see what the measurement was. I didn't know off the top of my head.
It's not set, it's not the law that traffic was passing under it. That is nowhere to be found in the law that I can find. Can you cite me the law that says that's the standard?
No, sir, I cannot.
The standard is it's got to be at least 20 to 22 feet above a highway. Isn't that true?
That's what you just informed me.
And communication lines have to be 18 feet above a highway. Is that you understand it or you don't know?
I don't know their measurement. No, sir.
Okay. Do you agree that Oncore representatives failed to request law enforcement to stop traffic until the repairs were completed?
Traffic was not stopped when I arrived.
So is that a yes to my question?
Whether they did or not before then and it was released, I do not know. It was
Okay.
not shut down when I was there.
Fair enough. Do you agree that Oncore representatives, agents, and employees failed to place markers to readily identify the power lines to the motoring public?
There were none that I was aware of.
Do you agree that Oncore agents or representatives failed to ensure proper clearance of 22 feet above the highway on the day of this collision?
After the storm, the process was in the works to make those repairs.
Are you aware that the storm was 8 hours before, a full 8 hours before any of these cars came into contact with these power lines?
Just from the work order you showed me from that event.
Fair enough. It doesn't take 8 hours to get the highway shut down, does it?
Don't know the time frame. It can take a while.
Well, I can show you a video from police car 446, and it took about 2 minutes. They parked 2 fire trucks across the lanes, and that pretty much shuts the highway down. Do we need to see that?
No, sir. They can do that if they want to.
The question becomes, who is making the decision that this is a safe or unsafe set of circumstances? And I want to know if you know who that is.
Anybody that was on site.
Fair enough. And that would include the troubleshooter, Mr. Whitehead.
He could have in his, if he deemed necessary.
Okay.
Made the request.
Right. I'm not saying he could shut the highway down, but he could make the request to get law enforcement to do it.
Correct.
and that would require accurate and thorough reporting of the information at the scene. Would you agree?
What information, what do you mean?
Law enforcement may want to know, why do we need to shut the highway down, right?
Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
And it would require accurate and thorough information to give to them so that they could make the decision as to whether it was necessary.
Yes, sir.
And Oncore itself needs accurate and thorough information so that people who are not at the scene can rely on information that's being passed up the line. Will you agree with that?
Yes, sir. Any of us do our best to give accurate information.
Right. And if we don't give accurate and complete information, it affects the decision-making process, correct?
Yes, sir, can.
In your CAPS training that you receive as a lineman and your on-the-job training, what training do you specifically get to provide accurate, thorough information, especially in emergency situations?
Anything of a specific training other than anything of a specific training?
Okay. I'm going to show you another document that it's hard to read, but I hope you can read it. It's called the Tate Springs 4322 Highway Crossing. You see that?
Yes, sir.
Do you know if that pertains to the site where this collision happened?
I believe that was the feeder, Tate Springs 4322.
What do you mean when you say feeder? That's a term I'm not familiar with.
Mainline conductor.
I'll represent that this was given to me by your counsel. I don't know what it is. Do you know what this is?
They are switching orders to operate switches on that feeder.
And let me make sure I understand what you mean. Does that mean to take the electricity that's going from one place and switch it to another place?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That would be switching to get on as many lights as we can and isolate the problem.
Okay. And again, this is hard to read, but I'm going to blow this corner up so we can see the times a little bit better. This is definitely 3:13:19. I can read that. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Can you read the time there?
No, sir, I cannot.
This looks like 10 and 2 zeros to me. Is that what it looks like?
Yes.
And I can clearly see this one's 10:36.
35. Yes, sir.
So those second two entries that we can read the time on, can you tell what is going on by looking at this? Number 2 and 3 is what I was focused on.
Open and check, open and place the tag. There's an air brake switch that they were asking to be opened on line 2.
Okay, can you tell the jury what that means?
They dispatched that order to open that device. Looks like hard to read, 2088.
Yes, sir.
That's the device number.
Okay.
And they would dispatch to whoever was going to that device to, in that first column over there, what position to operate that.
What does opening an air brake switch do?
It gives an open point in the conductor.
So there's no electricity that goes past that open point?
No, sir, not to flow through it. It's an open switch.
All right, and this looks like B. Anderson. I can't read that. That looks
Right.
like Anderson. Do you know who that is?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay. And then let's look at number 3. Close, check, close.
Okay.
What does that mean?
The That next line description is a SCADA-mate switch. That's another type of air brake switch, just an automated type. And the next line was after they did the first line 2, they would close that SCADA-mate on line 3.
Okay.
They are trying to isolate situation and energize as much as they can. Get everybody back, get lights back on as quickly as possible.
Sure, and we all want that.
And then make.
But that was happening at 10:35 in the morning, which is about an hour and 20 minutes before this crash. Is that
Okay.
right?
Yes,
And
sir.
this one was at 10 o'clock, and we can't read this one. So let's see what else is going on. I can't read the time, but I can see that says 3:13, 3:13, 3:13, and this is already 3:14. So what's going on here in line 4?
A clearance is a document saying this switch is open from here to here and can't be closed until that clearance is released.
Okay. So if I look at this right, what's going on between 10:35 and whatever time this is, the wreck must have already happened because they're issuing clearances. Is that a fair interpretation?
No, sir, it's not. That would have been drawn up when when lights were gone out.
Okay. But this,
They're trying to isolate where the poles were down with this situation, with this work or switching order.
and these times over here in this column, this is when they actually did the work though, right?
Yes, sir. That's when they operated that one line.
Pierce looks to be the dispatcher.
Yes, sir.
Do you know when you got your work ticket?
They, I sent it to the crew at 10:35 that morning,
Okay.
is what I have in my notes.
Okay. I don't have any more comments about that. When did you make the repairs at this location of 4,000 block of I-20?
I did not completely make the repairs. Once we arrived, the poles were not the new poles. We were gathering material, assessing what material we were going to need. Pole holes were not dug. We were trying to get that process going, get people there to dig the holes. So all we did while we were there was trying to get the poles set.
Okay. Do you know how long it took to repair the damage?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay. And you weren't involved in stringing the lines back over the interstate. You were just setting the poles.
No, sir, that's correct.
Do you know who was involved in stringing the line over the interstate?
There was a gentleman, Mr. Brose with Oncore, that when I left, he was there.
Okay. And
How long they stayed, I do not know.
my question is, who would be in the best position to tell me when they closed the interstate to make the crossing?
I do not know.
No, that's fair.
I don't know who was. We're on different schedules through the storm to get rest time, and I don't know who was on at that time.
Okay. Do you know where I could go to find out?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay.
I don't know when that was shut.
Is there anything I failed to ask you that you'd like to add about this circumstance?
No, sir.